Hello everyone, and welcome to another week of reflections coming from the manse. You will see that we're back in the study. Now, one of the problems with doing things from home is people watching will spot things. And I think 2 weeks ago we were in the study and someone has a question as to the symbols behind me here. This is Hebrew writing, it spells shalom, and I showed Brenda the word in my Hebrew Bible, and using her calligraphy pen she drew it out for me, and that's what that is. That's shalom. So shalom means peace, and shalom to everyone watching. The theme this week is still crazy after all these years and still Christian after all these years. Let me explain. Many of you will be familiar with Paul Simon of Simon and Garfunkel, and he had a hit in the 1970s entitled Still Crazy After All These Years. Some of you will be familiar with that song. It's wistful and nostalgic. The first verse is about meeting an old lover and they have a couple of beers together and they reminisce. And of course the whole thing about still being crazy after all these years comes out of the baby boomers, those born after the Second World War, and of course the revolution in the 1960s, where young people had a freedom to express themselves that their parents and their grandparents never could have imagined. And certainly the 60s and 70s, early 70s, were times of great rebellion and protest, and young people expressing themselves in radical ways. And it's wistful and nostalgic about that, because the song is also realistic and honest, because in the song you sense almost a melancholy that as the years have gone by, the crazy days maybe have waned a little. Now, when I went to university in the 1980s, we were all young Christians then, and being a Christian even then was quite a radical step, because the faith had started to wane in our culture, and it was something to be involved in the faith was seen as, what, are you religious? But we were all young, we were enthusiastic, passionate, we were the rebels, we were looking forward to going out and into ministry to make a difference in the world. So what happened? Well, of course, we just surfed on the wrong wave, because culturally the tide has been ebbing out on the Christian faith. But reflecting on these things, I am still a Christian. Although, like the nostalgia in Paul Simon's song, there's a wistful element to it. I heard a few months ago about someone I was at university with who died, sadly, a few months ago. He was somewhat older than myself, about 18 years, I think. Bob was his name. Great guy. And when I heard about his death, of course, I immediately thought of the uni days and the great dreams and that we had, and made me reminiscent of these days, but also reflective of our ministry. Where have the decades gone? Where have the years gone? And what's it been all about? And the journey of faith can be a troubled one. There can be wrestling with doubt. There can be times when the passion wanes and you become a little bit weary. But at the end of the day, when I reflect on it, I'm still here. I'm still a Christian, and hopefully a little bit crazy. As a Stones fan, I'd like to think there's a wee bit of the rebel in me, although wearing a dog collar on a Sunday and living in a manse makes me quite a conformist as well. And that brings me to the faith. And I want us to think this week, what's it all about? I want us to get behind the text, beneath the tradition, and before there was any institution of the church or church buildings. And what's there? Well, the enigmatic, mysterious, elusive character that is the Nazarene, the Galilean, Jesus. Someone who had an ordinary, very, very ordinary background. But my goodness, what an extraordinary life. Like a little stone thrown into the water that makes great ripples, the life of Jesus of Nazareth, the man from Galilee, has certainly made ripples. What an effect he's had on history. And the question that was raised when Jesus entered Jerusalem just at Easter time, who is this? The crowds asked. Who is this? That's a question for us today. Not who was Jesus, but who is Jesus, because from the church's point of view, Jesus is still alive. He's the living Jesus in our midst. So the question I have for you is this: whether you're in the church or not, whether you're not sure what you believe or not, if someone was to ask you today, what do you think of Jesus and all that stuff? Someone once said to me, do you really believe all that stuff about Jesus? And I just smiled and said, well, depends what you mean. But yes, I'm a Christian. So the question for you is, from your perspective, where are you regarding Jesus? What do you think of him right now? And are you open perhaps to have your views changed on that? So this week I want to explore still being a Christian in this modern world. And as a result, still being seen as crazy by some people, but also crazy in the 60s and 70s sense of being a bit of a rebel and a bit of a radical, a wee bit countercultural, because that's what Jesus is actually about. So let's go on a wee journey this week, and I want to explore some of these issues in more detail as to why I am still a Christian despite it all. So have a wee think about that. Thank you for joining me today and listening, and may God be with you.